Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 virtual Richard N. Frank Lectureship Series. We are so honored to have students, alumni, board members, faculty, and staff join us today. Before I introduce today's speaker, I wanted to give you a little background about this annual event. The Richard N. Frank Distinguished Lectureship Series was established in 1988 to allow students a unique opportunity to hear directly from the industry's best as they bring hospitality management to life through their own real-world experiences. Emeritus founding board member and longtime advocate of the Collins College, Richard N. Frank of Lowry's Restaurants generously donated a major gift that established the endowed lectureship series bearing his name. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Ms. Mandy Shaw, President and CEO of Blaze Pizza. Known for driving growth, fostering strong franchisee relationships, and championing the brand's focus on digital innovation, technology, and systems, Ms. Shaw will discuss agility in the restaurant space while sharing her experience with Blaze Pizza, which currently operates 340 units in 41 states and 6 countries. Please welcome our 2021 industry speaker, Ms. Mandy Shaw.
Thank you so much. I am delighted and very honored, frankly, to be here. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I'm a very casual person, so I'm super excited about the Q&A and very happy to share whatever I can. The industry is even more so after the COVID year known for sharing and being very transparent and open. So anything I can do to help you with whatever you can, I am here. So delighted to be with you guys today. So I thought about why am I here? I'll tell you about my career background in just a moment, but the first answer that I want to lead off with is passion. There's certainly in hospitality and particularly restaurants, you have to have a passion for this business because it's a complex manufacturing environment with a service component thrown in. And it's not easy. And folks who don't do it underestimate just how difficult it is or hard, meaning this is not a 40-hour-a-week desk job where you're drinking coffee and have your feet on a desk. I don't know if those jobs exist anymore, but and so I grew up, my dad was a Pizza Hut operator. My dad, and so through no formal path, I did not set out to run a pizza company, but that's where I've ended up. There's some level of synchronicity. He grew up in a tiny town in Kentucky, and out of 3 brothers, I think they had 6 shirts amongst them. So they would rotate them so people didn't think that they, only had 1 or 2 shirts a piece. And that just kind of sums up, his socioeconomic status. And one of his first jobs was working at Pizza Hut, and he just started at an entry-level position. I asked him one day, I was like, I keep telling people that you started as a busser. Am I lying? And he's like, ha ha. You actually did everything when you first started. You did bus tables, you also served, you also made the pizza. It was just an entry level position. But he worked his way up and became really successful and ran operations for one of the largest franchisees in Pizza Hut. And so to me, it's the embodiment of this story of this industry is one of the other ones, but it's like this industry is one of the few, especially in this country, that you can just start and work really hard, learn new things, and become really successful. You don't have to have a lot of additional education. You don't have to have a lot of significant investment. It's something that is very achievable in the sense of the American dream of I can work hard. And then particularly for restaurants, because it's a more achievable investment level, I can own one someday. I can be an entrepreneur. I can own 2 or 3 and create wealth for my family. So I just get really passionate about the restaurant business because it's people and people are happy and excited. It's very energetic, but it really is about opportunity. And there are too many times where we focus folks down one path. You have to have, a degree, you have to have an MBA, you have to have all these additional things. Those are great too, but it really is the land of opportunity to come into the restaurant business, be a proponent of people and the developer of people, and be super successful. So that's part of why I was so excited to talk to folks who are beginning or at least coming back to even to begin advancing themselves in these careers. So like I said, I'm excited to hear your questions at some point. So my story is circuitous, and I'll tell it briefly just to give you the idea that it's hard when you're coming out of school to not think in a very linear fashion about how your progression might go to get to what you want to be when you grow up. And by the way, we all say that because I haven't grown up yet. And there's plenty of other things coming down the path. But I started as a journalism major in college. I just was really good at English classes in high school. And I was halfway through my college career and we got snowed in an airport. And my dad starts talking to this guy next to him who was, I don't know, an editor or publisher. And he's, oh, my daughter's a journalism major, Georgia, Mandy, come here. And he says, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Something in journalism. He's like, do you want to be an editor? You want to be a publisher? You want to be a writer? You want to be a sports writer? You want to be a weather person? Like, and he's just like scattering all these things. I mean, and I said, I don't know. I don't have a passion for it. It just seemed like it sort of matched my skill set and might be a career for me. He looks at my dad, who, again, I told you what my dad did. He says, do you have any connections in the industry? No, I don't have any connections in, New York City in the world of publishing or anything like that. And he says, don't let her do it. She'll hate her job. She'll hate her life. She'll never make any money unless she's already got a leg up. So my dad looks at me and he says, you're not a journalism major anymore. And I went, oh, okay. This is early 90s and economy was soft. You looked around and said, where are the graduates getting jobs? Because I needed to support myself when I got out of school. And the accountants were making $25,000 a year, which back in the day was a car payment, an apartment, and a little bit of spare money to, go to the movies or go have drinks with friends. So I just said, okay, I guess I'm an accounting major. Came out of school, started as an auditor for 9 years with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I focused on media and entertainment. So I did companies like Turner Broadcasting, TV, radio, and those sorts of things. But I had clients across the board. I had manufacturing clients, independent startups. So I saw a ton of businesses and really got a great view into what the world looks like. Halfway through my career, I moved to Tampa, Florida, and started becoming the restaurant lady. So Outback Steakhouse, as it was known at the time, became a client of mine, as well as Hooters, as well as First Watch, which is a brunch concept, if you haven't heard of it, and a smattering of other names that you wouldn't recognize because they didn't get to be of size. And at some point I just said, oh my gosh, this is for me. Called up my friends at Outback and said, I really want to come work for you. But my son was 2 years old at the time. And I said, I'm tired of managing people. I just want to come in and do your external reporting and file all your documents with the public enterprises and then go home and play with my kid. I'm going to change my lifestyle a little bit. What happened was I got in and I got super excited about the ability to have an impact on an organization and actually drive change. Instead of being an auditor who's following somebody, to really own things, come up with great ideas about, this is a really inefficient way of doing this. Can't we make this better? Hey, by the way, for the 800 Outback Steakhouse units across the country, if I could give your managing partner some time back, because I hear you, right? The operator saying, I want them on the front. You need to be in the front talking to guests. I don't want you in the back checking on the bloomin' onion or making sure the steaks are done. That's a small part of the job. It's more about the hospitality component. And so I would say, well, I hear that. Can I help you? What if I can streamline this reporting so that they spend less time in the office and more time doing the things that actually grow the business? And it just kind of opened this door for me to learn. I got involved across every aspect of the enterprise that could be there. I was with what was eventually known as Bloomin' Brands for 13 years. I touched real estate. I touched supply chain, the finance side, the accounting side, probably did 15 or so systems implementations. We put in a new human resources platform, which then got me very familiar with the pay structures of what was going on in the restaurants and those sorts of things. So worked my way up to chief accounting officer. And then I actually moved over and became the CIO for 2 years. And this was right after the Target breach. So I had to get really good on IT security, even though I was not a technical person, and develop the first app in the history of Outback Steakhouse, did a lot of testing on strategic initiatives like tabletop payment devices and those sorts of things, but also made sure the wheels were on the bus, that the website stayed up, and did a lot of the infrastructure work. And then my last role there was CFO of the international division. So I spent quite a bit of time in Brazil, South Korea, and China, either running our markets that existed and figuring out how to make them more profitable, or in the case of China, I think we had 2 restaurants open when I first went there. How do we grow? How do we figure out how to unlock what China looks like, and not just from a financial perspective, but how do we resonate with the local consumer and turn into the next version of something that's really large? Because there's a ton of white space, obviously, for what would look like a casual dining restaurant in those markets. Towards the end of my career there, I kind of started getting frustrated. Very large organization, $4 billion company. And the things that I saw and that I learned, especially from the technology exposure that I had, about what agile development looks like, how you do fast decision making, get things to market on a faster basis, and think about just how to work differently and cut down on bureaucracy. I wanted to push that really hard. And so I came to this moment where I said, I think I've done everything I want to do here. I've had a remarkable career that I might not have had at other organizations, but I'm ready to go to something a little bit smaller where I can put major strategic handprints all over it. And so I took a year off work. I said, hey, I think I'm actually going to play with my kids. I had a daughter while I was there too. So I said, I want to teach my son, who was 15 at the time, I want to teach him how to drive. And I want to paddleboard and play golf and hang out with my kids, because single mom, I worked really hard, and there was a lot of juggling that went on. I said, I just want a year to focus on my kids. After that, I started looking around, and I got a call from the former CEO here who said, hey, would you be interested in being the CFO of Blaze Pizza? And I said, I've never heard of Blaze Pizza, because they didn't have any in Tampa at the time. Did a little quick homework, went to a location in Sarasota, also went to a location in Orlando at Disney. And you can imagine being in Florida and being in Disney. It was a hot day. I'm standing there, I'm looking at this really long line, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know if I want to stand here just to tell this man that I went and ate this pizza, but I was through the line in 12 minutes and eating a delicious pizza. And I said, oh my gosh, this is a thing. This is actually really a very viable consumer proposition because of what the folks at Blaze have to offer. And so came on board in January of 2018. And then in the course of a year and a half, stepped into the interim CEO role in August of 2019, and then became the permanent CEO in November of last year. So I was on the path to hiring some folks to come join us that have experience at larger brands. And 4 months into it, do we remember what happened in March of last year? The world fell apart. So first year as a CEO was quite the moment of how much grit do I have to pull this off. But that's what the restaurant business is all about. So segueing from again, who am I and how did I get here, to the idea of agility in the restaurant space, the fastest thing that we had to figure out was, and if you think about when the pandemic first started, is this the apocalypse? Is this going to be the end of some of our franchisees? Because I'm not sure how well some of them are or are not capitalized to weather however long this thing might last. What is consumer behavior going to do? All those things. And so the first thing was transparency and communication. We had daily calls with our franchise council. We had weekly all hands franchisee calls where we would say, here's what we know. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we don't know yet. And here's what you're going to hear from us about next time we get back on the phone. But we know we have to react rapidly to all of the changing conditions. Who's open or closed, right? What are the local regulations that are happening? How do we come out with a very strong consumer message to take care of our team members and the folks who come into the restaurant, that we're safe, that we're washing hands on a much more frequent basis than we ever were, that we have new sanitizing products in the restaurants where we're wiping down tables on a timed cadence. We have dessert bags that we actually use for our s'more cookies and our regular cookies. And I said, hey, what a great idea to have people put their masks in there. because otherwise when you're, sitting down at the time you still could, and you're taking your mask off, where do you put it? You don't want to put it on the table. You don't want to put it in your pocket. How about we have this mask bag? And so the leading mantra of everything that we talked about was, let's get gorilla. And I don't mean gorilla as in the ape species. I mean gorilla as in black war paint under your eyes, irregular and very advanced, idea of approaching a problem on how do we react to this? What do we need to do? Prior to the pandemic, Blaze was an 80% dine-in business. We still had 80% of our business, even though we had a great online business that was growing, from people who came in, walked down the line, built their pizza, got it fired out of the fast-fired oven, and then sat down with us to eat it in the restaurant. And that evaporated overnight. So we had to immediately ramp up ways to make up for those sales losses. We launched curbside pickup in 3 weeks' time. That's that agile moment that I was describing. Cross-functional team. Here's IT, here's operations, here's marketing. Here's the folks that are involved in figuring out how to make this work on something that would typically be 6 months to a year project at best. And we did it in 3 weeks. We added Uber Eats as a third-party delivery. We were already with DoorDash and Postmates. We worked really hard with Uber. Again, I think that one took us 2 weeks to launch them as part of the answer to the pandemic. So the swirl of taking care of our team members, being sure we were communicating a lot, communicating with our franchisees, and then getting feedback from our franchisees. What's working, what's not working? How do we guide you through PPP and making sure that you get the assistance that is out there so that you can, again, weather the storm and come out of it? And so what happened for us as a result of these projects that we did is we grew our digital business 150%. So what that means for us now, as the world is opening back up, is if we can retain, pick your number, 80% of that digital business, add our on-premise business back to it as we can get back to 100% capacity, our volumes should actually be higher than they were coming in. Lesson to be learned there. From great strife comes great opportunity, and that's usually a moment to make your mark, right? Or think differently about things. The agility component of that, so that's the microcosm of dealing with the pandemic, but it really lives daily. Like you don't have to have a pandemic to have that mindset. And it really is a key to success in the current world and what you're going to emerge into as you come out of your education and into helping others figure out what the next version of that is. I told you I spent 13 years working with the portfolio of companies that also includes Outback Steakhouse. When Outback was founded in the 80s, at that time, you could come up with a great restaurant concept, which by the way is not easy, but when you have that magic that hits, you didn't have to touch it for 25 years. You could just open another Outback that has the thick wooden booths, the purple ceilings, the boomerangs on the wall, the steak, the bloomin' onion, and just as long as you stayed true to your core, people got to expect that from you. That's not how the world works anymore. The half-life of everything is shrinking because of technology, the Uberization of the world, right? Where somebody sees a pain point, consumer demand doesn't have the patience that it used to. And they say, I want this. I want your service protocol to look different. I don't have 2 years to go think about changing my service protocol. So the skill set, if I can offer you any advice on how to approach life like that, is expansive knowledge, always asking why, trying to come up with better solves for things, and not admiring problems. There's a tendency for folks to be nail biters and like, oh, this is really tough. You have to move, you have to do things. And the more you know about, just as an example, if you're in the hotel side of things and you're thinking you're more on the guest services side, how much do you talk to the buyers? How much do you talk to the supply chain folks? How much do you talk to the other areas and components of the organization so that you've got a broader view on how to problem solve or come up with solutions from this agile mindset? How do I think about what's a competitive advantage that I have to offer up? And it really is just a giant career boost. I'll also turn that to from a personal perspective, when you think like that, and if you meld it with some personality characteristics, you will become invaluable to your employer, whoever it may be. I describe it as three things. And even as I was going and building our executive team, I described it this way too to the board. Yes, their resumes will have the requisite experience, but I want a team of people who have a low ego, a high degree of intellectual curiosity, and a propensity for action. Because if you exhibit those characteristics, even before you've got a ton of work experience, the more you build the work experience, it's such a competitive advantage. So what we have now is a team of people who really enjoy each other. And we have a hell of a lot of fun at work, even though it's hard. And there are a lot of things that we have to do, but it makes it easier to have tough conversations, negotiate, come to an agreement on something, shake hands, walk out of the door together, and fight another day, so to speak. So what does low ego mean? It doesn't mean constant humility. And especially for women, there's a lot of this of like, oh, I don't want to brag. And there's kind of sometimes a genetic muscle of we don't talk about our own successes enough. It's not about that. It's more about when your team wins, your team won. I can't take credit for that. It's all my team. I never could have done this without John, Susie, Jane, and so. Congratulate them and thank them so much for their hard work. Something breaks, you know what? I should have seen it. I should have been all over that. Here's what we could have done differently. This is the part that I should have led slightly differently, etc. That's what low ego means. It means you're more about others, the development of others, giving time back, contributing to the folks that can use your expertise, because there's just a great connectivity that happens when you exhibit those behaviors. High intellectual curiosity. Ask why. There, you will encounter people through your career who say, well, we can't do that. And you say, why not? Because we've always done it this other way. And especially hotels, restaurants, hospitality, like that, again, complex manufacturing facility with a service component thrown in. There are a lot of folks who are kind of like, well, you can't break it, because if you change something, it's just going to start to unravel. True statement, right? In terms of the theory behind it, but it also leads to stagnation if you're not constantly looking to evolve and thinking, how do we do that better? How do I make your life easier so that there's, again, a benefit that comes out of it? And then, by the way, you're going to love me to death when I give you an easier way to do something, because everybody likes that in their work environment, right? Also, again, showing interest in other areas. How can I help you? I'll give you an example of real estate. I was running accounting, and the folks that had to pay the monthly invoices and the CAM and the overhead and everything else would, complain and like, oh, this is hard, or it never works, or, those darn people in real estate. I'd say, when's the last time you took one of them to lunch and asked some questions about how do we make that not a thing anymore? I sat down with the head of real estate and just said, hey, can I talk through this with you and try to understand how do we fix this for our folks? Because it's going to increase job satisfaction and be a win for everybody. Well, I need a new system. Everybody that does what we do has, XYZ. And I say, okay, well, why don't we have it? Well, I can't get the funding. Nobody will let me do it. And I'd say, okay, well, how about if I get you the funding, can we do it together? Can I be on your steering committee so that we can make sure we implement it to solve both problems? And I can't tell you how many times I did that over my career, because again, it's just that curiosity. Like, well, how does the real estate side of things work? What is it that what pain points can I solve for you? And you just will reputationally build this platform that people will be able to count on you and know that you're there to help them and not solely be focused on yourself. Propensity for action. There are a lot of good talkers in this world. They have great ideas, or you sit in a conference room and you brainstorm. And I'm guessing some of you have maybe done group projects where somebody talks a good game and you're like, yeah, this is going to come together like fire. And then suddenly you end up doing somebody else's work for them because they aren't delivering. Propensity for action, being able to actually lay out the plan of how you're going to accomplish something, and then making sure it gets done to the last mile. There's a muscle of it's not particularly sexy work. Whatever the last 10 steps are generally pretty perfunctory, but they have to happen. The reason projects fail or implementations don't roll out well, or something that was ideated in a conference room loses its luster in the real world, in the hospitality world, it's because somebody didn't sit there and go, okay, we have to do these last 10 things and make sure that they happened. Or at the broader side of it, right at the beginning of the issue, as I go back to what I said, not just nail biting about it, coming up with, well, what is the solution? And if I come up with three, right, as this team of folks, who's the right constituency to say which one of those is the one? And then we're going to go do it. We got to go get after it and make it happen. And so I think that's most of what I was hoping to talk to you all about today. Unless there was anything else, Dean, that you were hoping came from my background, or any of the prep we did, or Michael, certainly, you know, if there's anything that we talked about previously that you'd like me to share, I'm happy to do so, but I am also very happy to answer questions.
Well, I think you've done a wonderful job explaining your career and your background, but I love your 3 points that we need to think about as we move forward in our careers. So very, very great information and fantastic knowledge. I think right now it's a great time to have questions from all of our great attendees today. So let's open that up for questions.
There is quite a large group, so it would help us out if you use the raise your hand button, and that I could call on you. If you don't know how to do it, just you could put it in your name in the chat. Michael, is there anything you want to add while we wait for our first questions to come in?
One of the things I would ask Mandy, we may have some people, I wouldn't understand how this is possible, but maybe you've never been to a Blaze. Can you describe briefly what makes Blaze different than similar concepts?
Thank you. That's a great question. I forget sometimes because I live it every day and I'm so passionate about it. So Blaze is the upgraded way you pizza, right? The legacy pizza players are still out there. And if you think about it, especially in the delivery environment today, that's all you used to be able to get. Maybe you could get Chinese food, but generally if you were thinking of getting food delivered to your home, it was one of the legacy for pizza players, right? Which also meant, because it was a 30-minute proposition, pizza wasn't something you normally ate for lunch unless there was a local pizzeria that you knew you could slide into, or if you happen to live in New York and you could get a slice at one of the pizza joints. And so the founders of Blaze 8 years ago said, how do we do this better? And by the way, let's talk about all clean ingredients. Let's talk about taking the best of the evolution of this industry and mashing it together with what legacy pizza looks like. And hence was born Blaze. It's down the line, customizable, 40 toppings-ish on average in a restaurant. And you can say exactly what you want, and it's all one price. So it also doesn't nickel and dime you when you think of when you order Domino's, every additional ingredient is $1 or $1.50. Proteins are more, or maybe different charges. And you kind of get sticker shock at the end of like, oh my goodness, how did this end up being this much? And Blaze is one price point. So whatever you want on your pizza, we call it a build your own. And then it goes into our flaming hot oven, which ranges around 600, 650 degrees, and it bakes in 180 seconds. So it's a little bit of an elevated fast casual because it's craft, it's artisanal. We make it right there in front of you. We don't have a back of the house where mysterious things are happening with fryers. We make our dough in-house every day. So that's really who we are. As an industry category, fast casual pizza is still relatively new. We're growing like great guns, but there are still a lot of people in this country that have never had a fast casual pizza. And there's generally this remarkable surprise that comes back and says, oh my gosh, who knew I was missing out? And so the other thing that we focus on is innovation. We were one of the first, we were the first national pizza chain to launch a keto crust, net 6 grams carbs in the whole thing. And it's delicious because we are chef founded and I run everything through the chef. It has to taste amazing. We're not doing things just for the idea of selling more pizzas. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. But it's more about authenticity to who we are. And it's that really clean ingredients, great tasting food, amazing pizza. and it's delivered in a keto version of it. And we also have started doing some innovations. We did a blazing hot chicken pizza late last year. We have a new item coming out that I bet some of you on here, as I'm looking at faces, know. It's a tahini pizza. So it's got a yummy chili lime and a chipotle ranch drizzle on it. That's going to be amazing. So it's really just trying to change people's minds about what pizza can be in a new and innovative way. Thank you for the lead.
Thanks. That was great.
We'll go with the first question in the chat from Javier, and then we'll go to Kemi and Aaron, who have their hands raised. So the question from Javier and Catherine, they have similar questions, is seeing how you've gone through many challenges in your career, and forcing yourself to learn new skills, what have been your main support systems and resources? And are there any underrated supporting systems that often overlooked that helped you overcome challenges, including work-life balance?
That's a lot. Yeah, so, well, let's start with, I've been a single mom for a decade. My son is 19. He's a sophomore at Northeastern in Boston. My daughter is 15. She's here with me in California, teaching her how to drive. And especially as a single mom, you have to have a network. There's no way you could possibly do this on your own. And a lot of people have asked me throughout my career about, are you okay with the sacrifices that you made? And one of the things I particularly tell people, because it's not really about, are you a mom or, a woman or a man? It's, what's your life? Are you a provider of other things? And do you have to have some balance in your life? Then it's little sacrifices. It's on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. You can never be 100% of anything. And you kind of ebb and flow over time, depending on what's important to you. For me, I sought out people that looked like what I wanted to look like, meaning they were either gracious leaders, very empathetic and high EQ leaders that seemed like they had it all together. I didn't have a lot of women examples. I did earlier in my career, and then they sort of got fewer and fewer. And so like now there's a pretty small pool, I would call it. But just finding people that are interesting. And then, I would take them to lunch and say, can I just ask you questions about how do you do what you do? And how does this work together? So that, I don't look at it as, oh, I sacrificed, my children. No, I wasn't obviously as home as much as a stay-at-home mom. But I would tell you, I have friends who, a close friend of mine worked at Chili's for years and years and years. She was in the learning and education side of things. And then she decided to stop and be a full-time stay-at-home mom. And even she has moments where she says, I don't know if I did the right thing. I feel like I should have stayed in it or done something. So there's always that natural tendency to question yourself. You just have to decide what's important to you so you don't have large regrets at the end of it. And if you think about quality versus quantity in anything, the amount of time that you are focused on your work or your family, I'm the mom who, like, on a weekend would still have to go to work or something, but I'd say, well, hang on, let's take a couple hours and I'm going to put a slip and slide in the backyard, and I slip and slid with my kids, right? And just tried to be very present with them so that when I was there, I wasn't staring at my phone or thinking about other things and the like. And I guess I would just close with, there's also a lot of talk about mentors, and especially for women, there's this, like, you have to have a very strong female mentor. You need allies, you need advocates, you need somebody who believes in you that will help you. So whatever form that takes, that's what's really important. Yes, you can have formal mentorship roles, and they are super helpful, but it's more about finding people who, again, you can tell your story to and tell them what you're interested in, ask them questions about how did you get your career and what did you do? And hey, could you help me think about this? And then it just develops a natural connection with that person where they will give you feedback, they will help you and can help you find different alternative opportunities as well, whether inside a certain organization or beyond.
Thank you. So we have Kemi, who'd like to ask a question.
Great.
Hi, Miss Shaw. Just wanted to say thank you for coming today. My question for you was, so you said you mentioned that you started as a journalism major, And that's a really big change going from journalism to accounting. How did you deal with that internal challenge of taking that risk? And did you happen to have a mentor to guide you through that as well?
No. And I would tell you, just watching my son go through this now, my goodness, the world has gotten so much better in terms of helping people figure out what the right answer was. The guidance folks that we had, it was more like, well, do you want to change? Yeah, I think so. Okay, well, here's the form. And here's who you take it to, because this is back in the paper days. And less about, well, how do you think about this? And what are you going to, use your accounting degree for? I think I am a little bit of an anomaly in that I'm happy doing a lot of things. I'm a dabbler. I've been that way with my hobbies, where I suddenly decided I wanted to learn how to off-road in a Jeep. So that's what I did. It's not my main passion in life, but I can say I did it. So the transition for me was more about, this is interesting. Now I get to learn about something new. It's that constant intellectual curiosity of, I didn't love it. I didn't walk out of my accounting classes going, oh my gosh, this is my passion. But I wanted to understand it. And so in talking to my professors too, and saying, can you help me understand this in a broader perspective? Like I understand, the textbook part of what we're doing, but I just don't have a really strong connection to this because I don't know anybody who does this either. So I think it's that. I think it's just finding folks to talk to. And really from a networking perspective, what I advise my son to do or help him do is set up lunches and dinners. So when I see somebody that has had an interesting career, I say, will you humor me and go to lunch and just tell my son your story? Because very few of us, like I said, have this very like clinical path that you knew exactly what you wanted to be when you grew up. Some people, some people knew when they were 12, like I want to be a doctor and I'm going to med school, and they sort of map their whole life that way. I admire those folks. But a lot of us are not that way. And it is okay to change. And it is okay to think differently about whatever you did up to that point was not a waste of time. What the start of the journalism degree gave me is a really strong written and oral communication platform, which is insanely important. And especially when you're leading an enterprise, to be able to talk to people about, here's what we're doing and why we're doing it and where it goes. So I would just encourage you to talk to more people about it. And it's not just, your family or close members. If you play the 6 degrees of separation kind of game of, who do I know who knows somebody, or how does somebody, especially in a school, help me get to meet those people so I can kind of flesh it out a little bit better and have somebody that helps you as you go through any transition like that, I think is really helpful.
Thank you. We have Aaron next.
Hello, yes. My question to you is, how did you, first of all, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
My question to you is, how did you get into your, how do I word this? I'm sorry. How did you get into your position you are now originally? Like, how did you create that connection to get into that? And how do you suggest others follow in that footsteps of getting into a position that you're currently in?
That's a great question. And I think I want to answer it 2 ways, because I'm not sure if you're asking how I got the CEO role or if you're saying, how did I get to Blaze? Reputationally, I got to Blaze because somebody knew me. When they were looking for a CFO, they had met one of my former coworkers from Bloomin' Brands. He and I had been in kind of peer roles for a period of time. And then he became the CFO at Wingstop, which I'm sure you guys know. And he's now currently the CFO at In-N-Out. Best job ever. I told him like that, I'm so jealous that you're getting that job at the time that he stepped into that role. And so he had met the CEO at Blaze at the time, got a phone call from him and said, I need a CFO. Can you just give me a name? Because I don't, yes, I can do a search, but it's really hard. Sometimes people get recommended that you don't really know. So who should I talk to? And that's how he got my name, which is why I got a direct call from a CEO instead of through a recruiting firm, which is usually how it happens. But in terms of getting that job, and I'll be really generic about it, I got an IT job as an accounting or finance person, right? Never should have happened, except I went and sat down with the CFO and said, I'm okay not doing a finance role because there were no openings. And I'm very interested in things that have a strategic advantage, AKA technology. And let me tell you how many systems implementations I've done. Let me show you an org chart of the IT department and talk to you about how the roles look and what I think they might need and some of the alternatives that we may have, so that I demonstrated, right, why, even though I wasn't a typical fit that you would see, that it was something that they could consider. And then I sat down with the chief human resource officer and also the CEO of Bloomin' Brands and told them a similar story, because I said, if you ask me what I want to be someday, I'd rather be a CEO than a CFO. Nothing wrong with being a CFO, but I don't have this, I must, ascend to the CFO of Bloomin' Brands position because I want to be a CFO of a public company. No, I want to be a leader and I want to make an impact on a business and I want to drive change. So that can take a variety of flavors. So when I was talking to them and they, were like, IT, don't quite have the technical chops. No, but here's why I know enough to be dangerous. And here's what I'm going to do to fill in maybe the blanks in my background to make sure that I am successful and along with us. And especially that comes in many flavors. There's a lot of times where someone will tell you, and even in my current role, I heard, I had a few people ask me when I said, yeah, I think I'm going to put my name in the hat. And they're like, gosh, you're young. What does youth, have to do with it? So turn that into, I hear you saying that. You're telling me most CEOs happen in their early 50s. Well, what am I going to get in the next few years that will translate to not just saying I got older? I got more gray hair and I got more wrinkles. And what's your point? Is it education? Is it something I don't know? Is it a behavior I don't exhibit today? So there are a lot of times where folks aren't built for a customized career experience. So you kind of have to lead them to the trough with you and say, talk to me about what I could think about things differently or why I have the skill set. And if you're telling me no, please tell me more than just no. What is the thing that I'm lacking that you don't see? And how can I get it? Is there a training course I can take? Even if it's, managerial or EQ, how to have a better empathetic presence with folks. How can I take a leadership class? How can I take a public speaking class? What are the things that actually say why I'm not there? And then go do them and then come back and go, hey, guess what? Remember you told me to do those 3 things? Did it. Took the public speaking. Hey, by the way, I stood up at the University of Tampa, just making this up, and gave a speech on XYZ. So let's talk again. And people respond to that. So you do really have to not just wait for others to promote you. You have to talk about what your interests are and how to get there and ask them for actionable feedback to go pursue it. And sometimes you won't get it. And sometimes you have to make the very hard decision to leave, because move, like even if it's interdepartmental, not necessarily leaving, your career of 13 years, finding a different boss, taking a little bit of a chance on something else that's not directly related to what you want to do, but might be part of the path that will land you there eventually. I hope that's helpful.
We have a lot of questions in the chat, so we'll see if we can move through some of them as we go. Can you talk a little bit about your research and development and what KPIs and data you use to figure out what's working or what's missing on your menus?
Ooh, fascinating question. Okay, can I give a shout out to Blair first, because he used to work at Blaze. Hey, Blair, thank you so much for your service. Blaze is still a nascent company. So when you think about what a Yum Brands, right, a Taco Bell, a Chipotle at this stage, yes, I'm sure they have a lot of KPIs and better systems and those sorts of things. When you're a mid-sized company, I like to call Blaze, we're at the Harvard business case pivot point of where restaurant companies get to. Somewhere between 300 and 400 units is your opportunity to develop infrastructure, put in systems and processes, spend a little bit of money, invest in your own brand from an outside perspective, doing consumer research, putting in different systems, software, and those sorts of things, so that you can become the next Chipotle or insert, Taco Bell, name of large brand here. We're not quite there yet. So a lot of what we do is still based on rather informal metrics. But for us, it is all about consumer. It is less about KPIs and more about because I'm a pizza company and I specialize in pizza, I don't have a bar and grill type menu, right? So I don't have to evaluate, do I need a dessert option that looks like an ice cream bowl or a milkshake or things like that? It's more about how do I be amazing at pizza, and how, as Blaze, which we have the reputation of being rather innovative. We did a White Claw pizza crust last year, which was kind of a fun thing for one day. How do we look at those things? I am always about putting it in people's mouths. So we do informal customer surveys. We do it in the restaurant. We'll just make pizzas, have people come in. We have questions we ask and do those kind of things to evaluate where we need to head. But a lot of it, I rely on our chef. Our chef is one of the founders, and he is a really different background person too. So he has a business degree. He also went to culinary school. He also was a food scientist. He worked for the Department of Defense for a period of time, and he was in charge of, we call it MREs, right? If you know what those packages of food that look like that our military personnel get when they're deployed. His job was to make it taste good, because if you think about when you're in the service and you're expending 4,000 calories a day because you got a giant pack on and you're, maybe in the desert or wherever you are, you eating every last grain of food in that MRE is what gets you enough calories, and it gets you a balanced diet so that you are able to perform. If you don't like the food that's in there, so you're trading out with your buddies or you're not eating at all, that's actually bad for national security. And I say that with all seriousness. That's how our chef talks about it and how he thinks about it. So he's just got this really magical background when I challenge him on things of, hey, how can we think about this differently? That he has a golden palette. He comes back with something that to date doesn't require as much pushing or nudging on the testing components, because he's really good at what he does. People is always the core of what it comes back to.
Sydney asks, is there advice you would give to women about being assertive and being in positions of power?
Yes. You do have to be assertive, but not, I was on a panel recently where they were asking about the pink ceiling, which I had never heard it coined that way. But there's this idea that women don't work well with other women at senior levels. And I chafe at even naming that as something, because it's not true, in the sense that it's not everybody. All people of all walks of life, there are moments of conflict or things where you just don't get along or gel or those sorts of things. The part for women is to just be authentic, to be your true self, and to not be the person who never speaks up. It's not enough to just be in the room. People can't read your mind. I had a woman that worked for me in finance at Bloomin' Brands, and she came out of FP&A, so she knew every bit as much as the guy, and they were all guys, as the guys in the room that would talk about it. And we would walk out of the room, and then she would immediately, this is what they missed, this is what they didn't know. And I'm like, why did you wait? Say it in a balanced way, say it in a productive way. But I have also made a career out of being the person who talks about the elephant in the room. If you can tackle a tough conundrum, something that is, gosh, that's really hard for me to say it out loud. But again, you do it in a balanced way, and you just say, hey, this is a great dialogue, what we're having right here. I'm going to offer a perspective or something that I think we're not talking about, and I think we're all aware of it. So let me just put this out there. I would get to the point where people would come to me and say, hey, before the meeting, I want to make sure you know about this because I know you'll talk about it. And I would say, you talk about it. Why? And this is male and female. Why aren't you the one bringing it to the table? It's a natural human thing where it's just, you feel like you're putting yourself out there. But as long as you pose it in a very clinical fashion, I'll call it, like without emotion, and you're just saying, hey, I think we need to talk about this. And if the dialogue comes back and says, actually, no, that's not an issue because XYZ, you go, okay, great. I'm so glad that's not an issue. But there's something to be said for just of having spoken up. It makes you more present. It makes you more visible. And then the last little piece I would tell you, because I was talking about how I got promoted throughout my career or got different opportunities, there were many times where I was told no, and I went back to the well. I'd listen to the first conversation and go, that's disappointing. Okay, and I'm taking notes mentally or otherwise. And then I would go back and say, okay, but why? Or what's the path? If you told me no, what do I do to do something about it? Because there is a tendency for women, for people of color, for anybody who just doesn't kind of fit the profile of all the last 10 people who've had whatever role it is, that they think, but you should be proud of what you've done already. Mandy, you're the chief accounting officer earlier than 90% of women. Mandy, you're a female CIO. There are not a lot of those walking around. Okay, great. That's not really relevant. Thank you for the kudos, right? But it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, which is the next level, because they have this just kind of automatic thing of like, you should be proud. Oh yeah, I am proud of humbly proud of what I've achieved. But we're talking about what's the next path. And so you have to think about in a very balanced way, not in a, there's no crying at work. And there's not, just a pout about it. I want to come back to you on that, because I'm not sure I still understand what the next path is, or is there any other way to get that experience? If you're telling me I need to have this position, finance for me, and all the heads of finance of all the brands are in role and they're not going anywhere, what else can I do? I can go do IT, I can go do supply chain, I can do other things that will get me back to that position, that work. Hopefully that's helpful.
Fabulous, thank you. And we'll do one last question here, and it's about sustainability. So because of COVID, there's been a lot more waste created. How does Blaze Pizza as a company handle the additional waste that's been taking place?
I'm open to suggestions if anybody has any great ideas. No, this is that, we're known as a very sustainable enterprise. We don't hold ourselves out as the pinnacle of it, but it is very much a core of what we do. All clean ingredients, right? All recyclable packaging and those sorts of things in the restaurant. Suddenly you have to have gloves on, everybody in that restaurant all the time, even though it's been proven that's not necessarily any cleaner, because your hands are, as long as you're washing your hands, it's the same kind of idea, right? And you're having frequent glove changes. Gloves went like this, and the cost of gloves also went up. So not even the sustainability side, right? But you have to do it in the moment. It is something that you have to respond to. For us, and especially for me as a CEO, tone at the top, overused phrase, so important. It really matters that I'm talking about it on a recurring basis. What are we doing to incrementally and exponentially over the years get better and better at this, so that we are behaving in the way that consumers, me included, expect us to behave? Because I told you our chef's background, we look at a lot of really interesting things that aren't quite on the market yet. And we've got a lot of them in test right now to try to figure out, can I compromise a little bit on, just to use as an example, a fork? It's supposed to be individually wrapped because of COVID now. And there's a lot of cutlery going around in the world right now because everybody gets a to-go package. What's the way that, even if it's not the most, a fork that never breaks, right? That's not really a sustainable position, because it does make you, the consumer, happy that your fork didn't break while you were trying to eat your salad, but I just made a really big landfill problem, right? And I think we have a pretty open-minded approach to educating the consumer as we move along. It's definitely one of the things that's super important to us as we go forward.
Well, thank you so much for all of your insights in your time today. Based on the enthusiasm in the comments in the chat, I know our students really enjoyed listening to you as well. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for attending. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was great to see you guys. I appreciate the opportunity so much.
And we look forward to having you on campus when it's safe.
Yes, absolutely.